Anthropic commits $200 billion to Google Cloud. Google's TPU supply just received a multi-year lock that leaves NVIDIA's enterprise sales team without their strongest reference customer. The agreement includes data handling terms that will block Anthropic from certain European contracts. Microsoft will respond by offering Azure credits tied to OpenAI usage, widening the gap for any startup not already inside that ecosystem. Smaller model developers face higher spot prices as a result. Coinbase and PayPal slash thousands of jobs for AI. The cuts remove the last human review layer on fraud and compliance queues. Coinbase agents now freeze accounts without prior sign-off, and PayPal resolves disputes at machine speed. Regulators will demand new audit formats that current agents cannot generate. Banks advertising retained staff for reviews are seeing faster onboarding among enterprise clients. Tooling providers face sudden demand for compliance export features. OpenAI closes record $122 billion funding round. Amazon and NVIDIA wrote data use terms into the round that let them fine-tune on outputs from the latest models. Those clauses limit how aggressively OpenAI can price future enterprise deals without undercutting its own investors. SoftBank's checkpoints Japanese government workloads toward this single platform. Microsoft now has to decide whether to increase its own stake or accept a diluted position inside the same cap table. UAE to run 50% of government on Agentic AI. Dubai procurement now requires Agentic handling for high-volume workflows and insists on human-readable decision logs. The gap in Arabic safety benchmarks leaves most global labs unqualified. Saudi Arabia and Qatar will issue matching rules within 18 months. GDPR authorities are already testing whether agent outputs about EU citizens can exit the country. Local system integrators hold the certification edge for the coming cycle. Chinese open-weight models reach coding parity. Training efficiency draws the attention, yet the closed data moat matters more. Chinese labs fine-tune on millions of internal enterprise repos that never leave the country. This creates coding agents tuned for local supply chain systems that U.S. models cannot replicate without equivalent data access. Expect domestic Chinese firms to standardize on these weights for internal tooling within 18 months, sidelining imports from Western labs. OpenAI explores spinning out robotics unit. Spinning out hardware now looks like the only way to keep the core valuation clean ahead of an IPO. The robotics division carries heavy capex that dilutes the software margins investors prize most. Teams there will need to court separate investors or fold into existing players like Boston Dynamics. Either path slows OpenAI's ability to integrate physical world feedback loops back into its frontier models and delays embodied AI progress by at least a year. xAI ships Grok 4.3 with voice cloning. Voice cloning at lower inference cost flips the economics for real-time agents. Developers can now embed personalized voices into customer service bots without paying premium per-minute fees that competitors still charge. This directly undercuts specialized providers who built their margins on cloning alone. Watch adoption curves in podcasts and gaming tooling accelerate sharply as the feature ships inside the default Grok API at no extra cost. Anthropic secures SpaceX data center deal. The SpaceX capacity gives Anthropic power redundancy that terrestrial clouds cannot guarantee during peak demand spikes. Chip deals with Google and Broadcom lock in supply at scale, forcing competitors to renegotiate their own foundry allocations or accept longer queues. OpenAI in particular must accelerate its Microsoft-backed infrastructure roadmap or risk agent latency gaps in always-on deployments. This setup creates an edge no amount of additional GPUs can fully offset in the near term. Microsoft OpenAI deal turns non-exclusive. The real shift isn't the multi-cloud clause. It's that OpenAI can now route workloads to the lowest cost provider without Microsoft approval. Azure's inference margins will compress once Google and AWS start bidding directly on OpenAI traffic. Expect Microsoft to counter by locking in enterprise customers through deeper Copilot bundling within the next year, or watch its cloud growth slow by double digits. Adobe launches PDF Productivity AI Agent. Conversational editing sounds convenient until every PDF edit trains Adobe's next model on proprietary document structures. This forces rivals such as Microsoft and smaller PDF vendors to accelerate their own agent features or risk losing workflow lock-in. Expect Adobe to see a measurable uptick in premium subscriptions within 12 months as users treat the agent as essential rather than optional. Corgi launches AI failure insurance. Insuring against AI mistakes turns every deployment into an actuarial table. The launch signals that AI errors have become frequent and costly enough for dedicated policies. Providers will now face customer demands for SLAs that match the coverage terms, pushing model accuracy requirements higher across the board. Within 18 months, expect startups without robust testing to pay premium rates or lose deals to more reliable vendors. Suno AI music platform eyes $5 billion valuation. A $5 billion valuation for Suno rests less on user growth and more on whether record labels sign licensing deals before lawsuits pile up. This forces Universal and Sony to accelerate their own AI music tools or negotiate revenue shares quickly. Otherwise, independent artists will migrate to platforms with clearer rights. Expect Suno to either secure those deals in the next year or see growth stall as legal risks mount.